Welcome to an Educators for Peace and Justice presentation on conflict resolution training. My name is Shara Molyneux, and here with me are Danica Dirksen and Allison Zwack. We will introduce Allison to you a little bit later. Danica and I are student teachers and action researchers from St. Mary's University. We're also connected with the Plowshares CAL Society, which is a not-for-profit group advocating for sustainable peace through education and outreach. We would like to begin by acknowledging our presence on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Our shared Treaty 7 heritage calls us to be reciprocal partners in the stewardship of this land. We would also like to thank all of the people that helped to make and shape this group, including the Dean of Education at St. Mary's University, Sarah Toomey, Deanne Barrett, Lorraine Kinsman, and our cooperating teachers at Eric Harvey School. Of the EP4J, which is a subcommittee of the Plowshares CAL Society. Through our meetings, we hope to collaborate and promote peace and justice in our lives, classrooms, and communities. Whether you're an educator or a parent or a student, we are all citizens who are subject to the norms and practices of our culture and society. This group aims to facilitate the sharing of ideas and knowledge to help us all develop and refine our practices as engaged citizens. Creating a culture of peace often means challenging oppressive norms, including the maltreatment of children. In our society, kids are often yelled at, humiliated, spanked, or worse by adults and caregivers, which has adverse effects on their development, such as impaired moral reasoning and less empathy, lower self-esteem and greater alienation, mental health problems, higher rates of depression, anger, anxiety, and even post-traumatic stress disorder. Peace scholars believe these experiences make violence the foundational theme of a child's worldview. I don't say that to shame anyone. As a parent of 3 little ones, I know how easy it is to let your emotions get the better of you, and I know the burden of guilt after yelling at your kids. I like to think of this group as aspirational, a place for building practices and knowledge. It is the job of peace educators to model an alternative worldview and be what Paulo Freire referred to as cultural workers, to be a transformative influence. Perhaps we can look at traditional Inuit culture to be that influence. The Inuit parenting approach is said to be one of the most gentle and nurturing parenting styles in the world. Inuit parents rarely raise their voices in anger and view losing your temper as childish. They're probably among the most emotionally regulated people in the world. Instead, Inuit parents guide behavior with stories. So, for example, after a conflict, parents would wait until a peaceful moment to reflect on the situation. They might dramatize the situation through a play or with puppets and try to make the story entertaining and funny so that it's memorable and kids are paying attention. They also use stories to establish rules. And so there's actually a traditional Inuit story that warns of the consequences of not wearing a hat in winter. It goes something like, "Remember to wear a hat or the northern lights will take off your head and use it as a soccer ball." I guess the dash of danger in this story really grabs the kids' attention and makes it memorable in a funny way. Next, I'd like to look at the developmental model of conflict resolution. Peace scholars Roshan Danesh and his father Hussein designed this broad developmental model as an attempt to describe how worldview and the evolution of consciousness alters our social behaviors, including the conflicts we are involved in, our approaches to conflict resolution, and the decision to be in conflict in the first place. Worldview is shaped by things like parents, society, and religion, and it is always in flux, moving from very little awareness of the needs of others in infancy, level 1, towards attempting to dominate in childhood, level 2, to a win mentality in adolescence, level 3, and finally to an altruistic desire for unity in adulthood, level 4. Conflict is inevitable. It's the normal and natural result of a clashing spectrum of differences. It's only our responses to these clashes that can become problematic, not conflict itself. It's important to teach strategies to manage and learn from conflict, which can result in growth. Richard Cohen is a professional mediator and author who visualizes this conflict model as an ideal system for resolving conflicts in school environments. The levels are not waterproof, and there is a lot of interplay between them. Level 1, on the bottom, the largest level, is a supportive school environment which promotes a culture of peace. It's often achieved through social-emotional learning that permeates the entire curriculum. It's referred to as the peace-building level. Level 2. Conflicts are handled through negotiation and lead to constructive outcomes. This level combines knowledge and skills in order to manage conflicts. It's referred to as a peacemaking level. Level 3. This is where there are situations that need a mediator, because not all conflicts can be managed by negotiation. Sometimes a neutral third party is needed to reestablish constructive communication and cooperation between conflicting parties. This is referred to as a peacemaking level as well. Level 4 is ideally the smallest part of the pyramid, and it should be used the least. Level 4 is for when circumstances are extreme and nothing constructive can arise from permitting the conflict to continue. Examples are harassment, exclusion, discrimination, anything that's a bullying type of behavior. This is the imposed peace or peacekeeping level. Some schools have an inverted pyramid where the stop level is the most used, partly because educators don't really have an awareness of other approaches, and partly because the conflicts they deal with are severe. And some schools have more of an hourglass shape because the handle and help levels, levels 2 and 3, are given the least focus. So levels can grow and shrink based on how much focus and attention they're given. To implement a successful conflict resolution program, you need to first analyze what type of conflicts you are experiencing most and what strategies would be most constructive for resolving that type of conflict, and then give attention and resources to develop that level. I will now let Danica take it from here.
So you may be thinking, what's the point of all this? We're talking about having students solve their own conflicts, but why should we do it? And research shows that students really gain empathy, they gain effective communication skills, anger management skills, problem solving skills. All these things that we want in adults, we need to foster in children, because we think that people will pick this up, and I think we can all name a few adults in our lives and workplaces who don't effectively know how to solve conflict or communicate properly, and that's not something that is necessarily learned. I think it needs to be explicitly taught in our schools. And these opportunities that we can give them in conflict resolution it basically teaches them to learn together, learn to live together, and embrace diversity. And they also really get competence in life skills. We foster safe and effective learning environments because when there's less conflict, they're able to focus on their learning. And we want a peaceful democracy. We want society to function. And by removing conflicts, we can actually have a burgeoning society. We found in our research that it's a greater effect size on elementary students than other groups. It's not to say that middle school students and elementary and high school students can't benefit, and I think they do benefit, and I think you should teach these skills at every level. But if you start them young, obviously you're indoctrinating them into this conflict resolution mindset, then obviously there'll be greater success in the future. We're also, when we do conflict resolution training, we're giving the students the language and the skills that they need to be able to describe their conflicts, to be able to understand what's going on, and to be able to talk about it to an adult and to other students effectively. Students really need to solve their own conflicts and not run to the teacher. So how do we do that? There's different types of conflict resolution training. There's direct skills instruction, where maybe you take a period or a couple little bits of each day, and you're teaching them directly those skills. So the process of negotiation, how to hear both sides, etc. Then there's peer mediation programs, where you're taking a small group of students, normally called a cadre, and you are training them to act as mediators. So you're not teaching the whole school, you are teaching a certain group to go out and then basically teach the whole school through action. And then there's ways you could embed it in curriculum by, if you're doing World War I and World War II in grade 11 and 12, you could teach them about conflict resolution training strategies through that lens of World War I and World War II, or whatever other curriculum is happening. Another really important part of doing conflict resolution training is recognizing the conflict styles
that your students kind of portray in their personalities and whatnot, so you can help them through that. Because if a kid's always avoiding conflict, that's really not healthy. Or if a kid is, I guess, always competing, and some of them aren't negative, but making sure that other kids are also compromising and collaborating and accommodating with each other as well. I know avoiding in my generation of young adults is very common. We call it ghosting. You're either talking to people a lot, or maybe you have a problem with a friend, and instead of talking to you about the problem that they have, they just ignore you for either weeks on end or block you or whatever. So that's definitely a problem that I'm seeing with, I think, technology aids that as well, because you can simply just mute somebody or block them. So that's definitely something to consider, especially if you're working with older teenagers, is how do we get people out of this avoiding phase of conflict and to talk things through with their friends, especially realizing that relationships and stuff are important. You can't just turn somebody off. So next I want to introduce Allison. Allison is I'm so lucky. She is my cooperating teacher for this semester at Eric Harvey, and it's been a pleasure working with her. She has been an educator for 34 years, so she has a ton of experience. And she has really cool research, I don't think she'll get to it today, but into how reading to animals can reduce kids' anxiety and also reading performance. And it's really, really interesting. And I think we're getting it together to be published soonish, so she can maybe fill us in at the end of what's happening with that. And she's getting training in animal-assisted learning and wellness. So she's full of knowledge. She runs a grade 4 leadership program at our school called Peace Ambassadors. And part of their leadership training is peer mediation, a program that pre-COVID, they would go out into the playground and act as mediators. We're getting this off the ground, and we're hoping that maybe someday they could be peer mediators again. So I haven't actually seen the whole process, but I'm looking forward to hearing about Allison and from her experience. So welcome.
Thank you, Danica. I am just as grateful to have Danica in my class, especially right now with everything that's going on. It's been wonderful to have student teachers at our school that embrace the peace education as much as we do as a staff. It really starts to spread that on. And I know Lorraine Kinsman, our principal, is on here as well. And I think that the communication Lorraine has with the student teachers and with the various supervisors at the different universities from where we draw our student teachers from has done some marketing in this area as well, so that I know that when the students come, they're well aware that we are a peace education school and that we have a number of tenets that our school runs on. And knowing that, I think coming in for our student teachers can be a real benefit, because they get a unique opportunity to learn something in the moment while it's happening and as it's evolving. I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, that I started working with Lorraine directly, although I've known her for over 30 years. We have been friends and have had the opportunity to work together. And 11 years ago, we opened Cranston School, where we really put into place a lot of this peace education work that we're doing. And she had started it at another school, but this was where I think it really came together as a whole school way of being. as teachers and students and families as all part of one school. And I think the success of our Peace Ambassador group and our peer mediation strategies we've worked on really lies in the fact that the whole school is on board with this whole idea of peace education. It is much more challenging for sure to develop these kinds of programs and have them work to the same level or to have the same depth and complexity that we're able to do with little grade 4 students. My past experience in leadership was with grade 5, 6s. And when we opened Cranston, the oldest grade we had in the school was grade 4. And I thought, oh my goodness, how on earth am I going to do what I used to do with the grade 5, 6s now with grade 4s? They're so young and they're little, and oh, this isn't going to work. And so a lot of thought went into building up this idea of a leadership group where grade 4 students are actually the leaders. They are the oldest ones in the school. And because they go to middle school, they don't get that opportunity to be the eldest and to be the leader again until they're in grade 9, which is an awfully long time for them to go without kind of being given a natural opportunity to be a leader in the school. The goal of our Peace Ambassadors team is that they will learn a number of things over the course of the year. We usually start at the end of September. We're a little bit late getting going because we've had to figure out how to manage this in COVID when we cannot have gatherings. So I think we have a plan, and the letter went home today for the parents. I'm sorry, my dog needs out. You are painting. Oh, go. I'm sorry. I'm home here by myself. So what we really hope to do was to be able to build skills like Danica had referred to earlier in a small group of students that's kind of above and beyond all of the many layers of things we do with everybody in the school. And it's that layering upon layering. So teaching self-regulation, talking to kids about the difference between a big problem and a small problem, and a big reaction and a small reaction, teaching them the vocabulary and the ways of being in a more peaceful way that are all those many layers. And this is kind of, I guess, a little bit like the cherry on the top of this great big layered cake that we have already created, where above and beyond all of that, we have a really committed group of students who basically sign up for 9 months of a club or a leadership group. And that's a big commitment to ask from 9-year-olds. But we give them a chance to come a few times in the fall when they sign up, and we offer an explanation to them and the parents. When we first started and it was a brand new thing, nobody really understood what we were trying to get at. And so, but what happened, what the lovely thing that happened was, over the years, as the kids came up to grade 4, they, and I will tell you, we've been getting hounded. I get hounded in the hall about when's Peace Ambassadors starting, because as they come up through the grades, they're interacting with these older students all the time as leaders, and they see them in assemblies, they hear them on announcements, they come and do class visits and share information with the younger kids. They work on the peer mediation with them out on the playground. And the beauty is these younger students can't wait till they get to be a Peace Ambassador. And so they've been waiting for their turn, and now I'm not moving fast enough because of COVID, and I broke my ankle and all kinds of things. So they're very excited to be joining the Peace Ambassadors for this year. And I think if we can find a way to make that happen for them, might look a little different as we go along, but we will adjust the best we can to still provide that opportunity for them. And in addition to that, when we were doing it at the Peace Ambassadors at Cranston, our first group left and went on to middle school. And a couple of our students marched right up to the principal of their new middle school and said, well, when do the Peace Ambassadors start? So they went and ended up starting their own group there at the middle school, because they were carrying the torch. We kind of breathed that into them, that they are now leaving our school, leaving Cranston or leaving Eric Harvey, and they're carrying all of this learning and practice with them to where they go next. And that's really heartwarming for us to see. We really work on building the idea of having a common language in our school as well. And so in order for peer mediators to be able to actually function and be accepted by the other students, there has to be that idea that when we're talking or when they are talking with groups of children, that they're using language that everybody understands and knows. And building the sense that they are ambassadors as opposed to bosses. We do usually have a few who need to work through the how not to be a bossy peace ambassador and how to be a kind and caring encourager and nurturer. We spend a lot of time working together on how we use words, what words we use, the tone of voice we use, how our body language and our facial expressions can sometimes be opposite of what our words are saying. So we can be thinking we're saying something kind and helpful and supportive, but if our face and our body are not also matching that, little children don't know what to make of that. In terms of the kids they're trying to help out on the playground. So we spend a lot of time building their skills, usually till about the end of January, starting in October. And then we don't actually have them going outside and onto the playground in terms of being a true peer mediator until about February or even early March. It's not something we want to rush. We don't want to kind of half equip them and then have everything fall apart and have to undo it and fix it. So we do take our time to make sure through the activities we do with them, the discussions we have, we practice, we model, we role play. There are just many, many steps along the way to building up their ability to do this job well and for them to feel confident as they move into that role within the school. Lorraine, again, has been very supportive of that and participates with our students as well. We've sometimes connected with other groups as well. We have for a number of years connected with the Right to Play group, and they have come in and they do some wonderful work with the students in addition to what we do. Teaching them how to take games that are designed to teach a lesson, usually around, it can be the games and when they're doing Right to Play are often done in countries, third world countries or areas of need. And so they will teach the games to the kids and then get the game. Our kids will then teach those games to the other children in the school, which is wonderful as well. And there's always a lesson and there's kind of a whole format involved in that. So we try to make the building up of the skills fun and exciting and interesting for them and bring in other people. We're by no means experts on that, and we evolve every year as we as this happens. So this would be year 11 for us, working with the peace ambassadors, and it changes all the time as we go along. Also, because it happens year after year, the students, the younger students, learn that those other students are there to help them, and so not to be afraid of them as the older students in the school. Generally, our clientele is pretty good around that sort of thing, and there's lots of younger brothers and sisters close because the grades are so close, and so they'll often, you know, be watching an older brother or sister be a part of this as well. We try. I'm sorry, I'm going to be 1 second. Sorry. He's very bossy. We do try to have our peace ambassadors be very visible in the school. So we actually do have like an orange and blue sash that they wear when they're acting as a peace ambassador in more of an official capacity, which they quite love and are very proud of. When they wear that, it's a good way for them to be identified. They participate in assemblies, they'll make videos, they do all kinds of things so that their presence is established long before they are actually outside on the playground trying to help mediate conflicts. When we're working with the students to come up with how that's going to look when they go out to work with the students outside, we do expose them to a variety of different strategies and ways that that can happen. And then together with their inputs, we decide on what our problem solving strategy will be. So each year we go through this process. We know where we're trying to get to, but we really want them to feel like they have ownership in the problem solving process as well. So it's not us saying, here's a canned way to solve problems. Here you go, figure it out, learn it, and go practice and do it. We want to hear their thoughts and opinions as well. We will often send them outside in the beginning just to observe, and they'll have their job of going around and just watching what kinds of concerns are you seeing out there. Well, they're fighting over this particular piece of the creative playground, or they can't decide how to start their soccer game because everybody wants to be in charge of the teams, or what have you. So they do take some time as well to just observe and watch and know from their own experience what kinds of issues are common that arise outside during that time. And we bring those back and share them and kind of consolidate them and clump them into categories. And then we talk about, how do you think you could be able to help them to work through that and get their initial ideas. We then share with them some videos and things of other students around the world who are using peer mediation. So we've collected a little group of videos where there are actual kids in schools that have put various things into place. And so we divide them up and have them watch those and list what is it you liked or didn't like from that particular process. And then we come together and jigsaw that information. And then together we kind of combine it into something we like and we think will work at our school. That always comes down really to the same basics. Even though everybody is doing it, there are the common themes of, first, we need to stop and take a moment, take a breath, because you cannot solve a problem if you're dysregulated. So that really is step number one in any problem solving process. If we cannot get people to give them a moment, give them some time and space first, jumping right in to try and mediate people who are flapping about, it's not going to happen, and certainly not with children helping children. So we start with the stop, breathe, and just kind of gather yourself. We encourage, the next step is often around talking it through. So the mediator will have a process they've practiced where they can get both sides of the story, making sure each person has an opportunity to share their side of the story without being interrupted, etc. So we do stop, we do talk, we do think, where we are brainstorming how might this problem be solved, and they are then taught to include the kids with the problem in the solution. So they are not out there to say, and you go here and you go here and done. They have to now help these little people come up with a solution everyone can live with. So watching the videos and things that we show them gives them quite a variety of things, that little tools in their toolkit that they can use to help the kids come to something that everybody can live with. And then the last step is an action. So what are you going to do when you walk away from this mediation? What is your next action going to be, so that you're carrying what you've just learned and resolved into getting everybody back playing and doing their job? Hopefully that whole scenario should really only take a few minutes. It should not be a 40-minute extravaganza out there. We try and keep things pretty succinct. We've given the students little cards with some prompting questions. And the other piece to using the card is that if they need support, and we talk very much with them about not every problem is your problem to help solve. So if they go over and say, hello, I am Allison, and I'm a peace ambassador. Did you need some help to solve your problem? And if it's just a big thing, what they do is they take that card, which is on a wrist strap, and hold it up. And we make sure that our lunchroom staff and supervisors are all also aware of what the role of the peace ambassadors is and what the steps are. Because if they see a peace ambassador with their orange sash holding up that card, they know right away to come over and to ask. So they are trained to ask the peer mediator, you know, is there something I can help you with? So again, we're not impinging on the job the peace ambassador is doing, but they may need some extra support, and they may just be trained to say, could you please help, to the person, and they'll take over from there. So they have, we all know they're young, and we all have sometimes limitations on what we can do and how far we can go with a particular conflict, depending on what it's about. And sometimes we need to step back and let someone who's got more experience and more training take that over. We're going to be working on this year, and at Cranston we actually had bookmarks made for the children and posters for the school, so that it was well known around the building, as well as shared with parents what our problem solving process was. So at Cranston it was the stop, talk, think, and act. We had a little image for each one. It was very simple, but it was something that the kids could remember, and then their parents could also support with that at home. So if brother and sister students from our school are at home having a battle over something, the parents could also have the same language, and they could use the same process at home as well. I'm not sure if that's, yeah, I guess I could take some questions if anyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allison. I really like what you said about like co-constructing ideas of like what the process is going to be, because with each group of kids you get in each year, you want to make it different and not cookie cutter for everybody, and include those personalities and the experiences of those kids, especially. But yeah, if we want to open up, if you have a question, or if you